Hey everybody, welcome to my first end of the season mock draft, and today we're just going to do one round with no trades, so let's get into it. So, starting us off here, we have the Chicago Bears. Now, this is an interesting pick because obviously there's been a lot of talk about trading down, potentially picking another quarterback, which is insane to me. But I'm just going to go ahead and take the best player on the board here, which is Jalen Carter. Now, most people would say it teeters between Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, but it is a lot harder to find that solid interior guy than a great edge rusher. And you can see it with Aaron Donald and Chris Jones being great examples of that, but not a lot of other players being great interior guys. Like we have edge rushers like Micah Parsons, TJ Watt. I mean, there's so many of those guys you can name, but there's not a lot of interior, which is super important. Next up, the Houston Texans. I think someone will trade up for Bryce Young, but in this scenario, they would definitely take him. Obviously, quarterback is an insane need for them, and it's a no-brainer, honestly. And he's the best quarterback in this draft besides his size concerns. He can still ball out with the right coaches. Cardinals is a weird spot because they kind of need everything besides quarterback, depending on how you feel about Kyler Murray, but they paid him, so we're just going to take that off the needs list. So I'm just going to go ahead and take best player available here. Let's just go Will Anderson. Good fit. I mean, we have Jonathan Gannon as their coach now, and he should get the most out of him, which is good for him. So, yeah. Indianapolis Colts. This is a weird spot because this is one of those teams that can trade up to one and is known to want Bryce Young. I mean, the owner, Irsay, said he likes the Alabama guy a lot, which is interesting to me. But I'm going to go ahead and say they take a quarterback here regardless, even if they miss out on Bryce Young. And let's just go ahead and say they take Will Levis. Levis is not everyone's favorite. The draft community and NFL community as a whole seems to be super split on him. Either you love him or you hate him. And I think the Colts might just love him. It's kind of a guessing game here, but yeah. And to close out the top five, we have Seattle, which is one of the spots where they made the playoffs regardless of not having a starting quarterback at the beginning of the year. And they banked on Geno, and he did them well. So I don't think they would take a quarterback here, even though Stroud is sitting right there. And let's have them go with an edge rusher instead, because that defense really needed some help. I mean, they got a great secondary going over there. I think they're going to build that up to be not the Legion of Boom, but something great. And I'm just going to go ahead and take Tyree Wilson. He's a guy who may not start right away, but he has one of the highest ceilings in this draft class. So, yeah. Coming in at number 6, we have the Detroit Lions. The Lions are one of the most interesting teams on this list because this isn't even the real first-round pick because they had a winning record. But they got this pick from the Rams, and the Rams sucked this year. So it was great for them to have a top 10 pick while also seeing what they had in Dan Campbell and their team. Now, at number 6 here, they could do a number of things. I think a popular mock will be CJ Stroud if he's not taken in the top 5. But I'm going to go ahead here and select Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. This guy is super athletic, and I really think that the defensive coordinator for the Lions and just Dan Campbell in general can turn this guy into something special with the right tools. I know Jeff Okudah didn't work out, and they probably are scared to draft a corner this high again. But I really think that they know what they're getting into if they take Gonzalez, whereas Okudah was more of a solid prospect, and something just went wrong. At number 7, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders just moved on from Derek Carr. We have no idea where he's going to go, but they don't have a quarterback. And I don't think they want to bank on Jarrett Stidham. So I'm going to go ahead and select CJ Stroud here. Now, Stroud is a guy who is up and down at times, but his accuracy cannot be denied at the next level. And I really think that he could do great things here with Devontae Adams and the weapons they have over there. And at number 8 here, we have the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are a team that needs a quarterback bad, but all the top guys are gone unless you count Anthony Richardson in there. But he's more of a guy who's just not going to play the first year. And the Falcons kind of want to see what they have in Desmond Ridder, or that's what it looks like anyways. So I'm just going to go ahead and take the best player available here of what they need. And I think that might just be... I mean, there's a few guys that could take here. I mean, I could see Witherspoon going here. I just don't think they'd take corner this high. I mean, they have Terrell on one side, and I think they're okay. Quentin Johnson could be something interesting here, but I don't know if they'd take receiver here. I think the best pick for them would probably be Paris Johnson or Lucas Van Ness. You know what? Let's be fun here. I'm going to go ahead and take Quentin Johnson here. Seems a bit high, I know, and the receivers in this class aren't incredible, but he's a guy with a lot of upside, and I really think he could do great things to the Falcons. And they haven't really had a great receiver since Julio was in his prime, unless you count Calvin Ridley, a couple of years, but he wasn't great. He was just real good. At number 9, we have the Carolina Panthers, and this is a team where I could see a quarterback going. However, in this scenario, only one of the top few guys is here, which means that it could be a toss-up. However, I think Frank Reich will jump at the opportunity to take a quarterback of his own. After all, he hasn't had one ever as a head coach that's even decent, besides Andrew Luck, and that was a long time ago. So I think he will take the best guy available regardless of who he is, and bank on the fact that he can make them good. So I'm going to select Anthony Richardson here, and I think he'll just hope that everything works out. Obviously, he won't start him his first year. That'd be insane, but we'll just see what happens. And then at 10, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, who got very lucky with the Saints last year in the draft, and they could honestly take a number of things. I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to stay in Philly. I think they said they would tag him regardless of if they didn't get a deal done or not. So I think cornerback could be a great spot for them, for Philly, because Bradbury's probably not going to stick around because of cap reasons. So I'm going to go ahead and take Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois, who might be the best cornerback in this class just right now. I mean, Gonzalez might get there with development. I think Witherspoon could be similar to, I don't want to say similar to how Sauce Gardner was, because that was just another level, but kind of the same idea where he comes on and he plays well, and well enough to warrant taking top 10. At 11, we have the Tennessee Titans, who actually disappointed in the second half of the season. Obviously, it looked like they were a clear-cut winner for that AFC South, and they just fell apart. Obviously, Tannehill going down and all that. And I think that without A.J. Brown, they really showed that they're a one-dimensional offense just based around Derrick Henry, and if the team shut him down, it was kind of over for them. Now, there's no top receiver here anymore since Quentin Johnson's gone. All the others are kind of ranked evenly. We have Addison, we have JSN, Zay Flowers, but this is way too high for them to go. So unless they really wanted one bad, they would probably trade down. But right here, I'm going to go ahead and select Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State. I know they're kind of, actually super scared to take a tackle in the first round again, obviously after Isaiah Wilson. But I really think this is a good opportunity for them to start rebuilding that offensive line, especially since Taylor Lewan might be a cap casualty. So yeah, I think that's a good pick for them. Now here with the Houston Texans, this is a Quentin Johnson spot in my mind, but since he's already gone to Atlanta at 8, I'm going to go ahead and select the next best guy who could benefit them, and that's Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. I think Van Ness is one of the better edge rushers in this class, and obviously not having a lot of experience in college, but whenever he was on the field, he was obviously the best player on his team, and I really think that D'Amico Ryans could make him into something great, especially with more training and more development. At 13, we have the New York Jets, and obviously this is a team that needs a quarterback, but there are none available that are worth taking here, in my opinion. And I really think the second position that they need the most, which is actually listed here, is tackle. Now, they have a few guys who can play, but none to the level that they need. And especially since Mekhi Becton is hurt 24/7, they just need a guy who they can depend on. And I think that's either Peter Skoronski or Broderick Jones. And I think it will be Jones. And I think Jones could go even higher than this. But I think he's just a great tackle and probably might be the most impactful one in this class. And that leads us into the New England Patriots pick, who are the most, I don't want to say intriguing drafters, but they never take the guys we think they're going to take, except for the outlier of Mac Jones that one year. But I think they could go in a number of directions. Brian Branch is somebody who Belichick could use as a pure safety who can play in the box, he can play anywhere, and that's what he kind of likes, players who can play different positions. But I also think that tackle is a possibility, and Skoronski could definitely go here, which is a good pairing. Because obviously, Isaiah Wynn, their tackle is probably going to leave because he's not really worth signing anyways. And he kind of fizzled out there. So they won't have a tackle on that one side. So I think they could go ahead and just take Skoronski here. But I also really like the Brian Branch pick, which is really fun. And it's also good because he's a good player. But I don't know if he would take a safety this high. So I'm just going to go ahead and say Skoronski for now. That's the safe pick. And that leads us into Green Bay. Yeah, so at number 15, the Green Bay Packers have a number of things they could do. In this scenario, I'm just going to assume they keep Rodgers because of the no trades thing. But if they don't, obviously this number 13 pick could belong to Green Bay, and that would change a lot of things. But in this scenario, they could use a ton of things, but I'm just going to go best player available and probably say they're going to go D-line because they don't usually pick this high, and I think this could be a great chance for them to take a D-lineman, even though some of these other receivers are here. And that would be probably a more valuable pick for their team. But the Packers have shown that they don't take receiver high at all, and with the recent second-round pick, obviously, that proves that they're going to say, hey, we don't need to take a receiver in the first round. Look at this guy. We took him in the second. He's good enough. So I'm kind of stuck between Branch and Brzee, but I'm going to go ahead and say that Brzee is the right pick here. I mean, he's got all the traits that you want, and besides the injury history, I think he could really make a difference on this Packers defensive line, especially for the future. Maybe not right away, but he'll definitely become an impactful player if they use him right. So Washington's on the clock right now, and there's one thing they need above all else besides quarterback, and I think that might be a corner. Now, I know they have some guys they like, but it's just not looking too great, especially if they want to compete with all these receivers in the NFC East, like A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith in Philly, CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. I mean, everyone's got guys besides the Giants, obviously. But yeah, I really think that Washington right here could take a corner, and I think Joey Porter is that guy. Now, I know there's a lot of fans who want the Steelers Steelers to take him, but I really think they'd have to jump up to 14 or 15 to really secure him. As weird as it sounds to take a corner that high, but yeah, I really think that Washington will take a defensive back in this draft. Speaking of the Steelers, at 17, I know Joey Porter is gone, so I'm going to have them take the next best kind of guy who could really improve their team. And I'm struggling between, I think Myles Murphy is going to go a lot higher than this. I don't know where he would go. I think he could go at 15. I think he could probably go at 12, maybe even 9. But I'm just going to have him go at 17 right here. I think this is a good place for him. He is the most consistent player on the Clemson defensive line, and I'm a fan of him. Yeah. Now we're moving on to the second Detroit Lions selection of this first round, and I think they can go in a number of directions here. One of them is not receiver because they have Jameson Williams they trade up for last year, and obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown has kind of exploded as this great player all of a sudden. So I'm going to go ahead and have them take... I like Kancey. I think they could go D-line here. I know Dan Campbell loves his big guys, so I'm going to go ahead and have them take Kancey. And he's kind of emerged recently as this powerful defensive tackle who's gotten a lot of looks as to be the next Aaron Donald in a way of this draft and combine because of his strength, and obviously went to the same school. That's just helmet scouting, but he could be a great player obviously in the interior, and that's kind of what the Lions lack in some areas, and obviously there's some bigger holes, but that's one of them, and I think this should benefit them in so many ways. And next up we have Tampa Bay, who is, I don't even know how to describe them. They're Tom Brady-less. Their offense is a mess, and their coaching staff is kind of a mess too. I don't know if Todd Bowles is a great coach, but he's there, and he's there to stay for at least the next year. So we're going to go ahead and take what I think the Bucks front office would take. And with that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and have them take... Well, I think Brian Branch could be the move here. However, I think their safeties are fine unless they want to move him to corner. And I don't really want to reach here, but I think Deonte Banks is the right move here. A little higher than I would have him go, and I'm not super high on Banks, but he's lengthy and he's got some solid upside. I really think he can make an impact right away, similar to some other corners in this class. But yeah, with their top two corners being free agents, I don't know if they bring them both back. But if you bring one of them back and take Banks here, or another corner if they fall, I think they're in good shape defensively. And yeah. At number 20, we have the Seattle Seahawks second pick. And there's a lot of teams with second picks here, obviously. We have them and the Lions trading their franchise quarterbacks, within the last 2 years. And seem to be benefiting off of it. Obviously, the Rams have the Super Bowl, but Stafford got hurt this year. And the Lions almost made the playoffs. So say what you will. And at 20, I'm really interested in having the Seahawks double dip and getting someone like Andre Carter or Nolan Smith here. But I don't think they would do that for double dipping on the D-line. I think they're satisfied for now with that Tyree Wilson pick. So I'm going to go ahead and have them take... They need O-line bad, but I don't know if they would pass up on a guy like Brian Branch in this spot. I'm thinking. They don't really need receiver. We took edge. I don't know if there's anyone else they would take, obviously. Yeah, I mean, they could take tight end, Michael Mayer. Interesting spot here. Dalton Kincaid, Luke Musgrave. But I'm just going to go ahead and have them take Brian Branch. I think he could go a lot higher than this with kind of like the consensus on a lot of these guys. Like Miles Murphy could go in the top 10, obviously, but it's kind of an interesting class in that way, like where certain players go a lot higher and a lot lower than we expect them to. And obviously the Dolphins forfeited that pick, so we're moving on to the Chargers. And the Chargers are a team where I'm just going to go ahead and select right now, and I think it's between Jordan Addison and a tight end here, Dalton Kincaid or Michael Mayer. It could be either one. And I think Keenan Allen will be cut. So that leaves them with Mike Williams. And that's kind of it as your top guy. And I think Addison with Kellen Moore, who has a history of being a great offensive coordinator with the numbers, I really think he could do some good with Jordan Addison here. And yeah, I'm just going to go have him move on with another receiver here in the case that they cut Keenan Allen. If they don't, they could easily just take a tight end, which is another great pick here. At 22, we have Baltimore picking, and this is the most chaotic team besides the Packers of the offseason in the quarterback market, because Lamar Jackson's in a similar situation as Rodgers, not because there's no love there or anything, but because they kind of are refusing to pay him the money that he wants to have. And I think there's plenty of teams that would easily pay what he wanted, whether that was, I think it was $250 million contract is what the number was, but I'm going to assume they keep Lamar in this situation, and I think they're going to make him really happy by selecting a receiver here. Now, they picked Rashad Bateman, who's a good player, and I think he'll be great within the next few years here. But I think picking another guy and just having weapons for Lamar to throw to, especially with Monken coming in and Greg Roman out, so you're going to need more receivers. I think any of these guys will do, whether that's JSN, Zay Flowers, those are the only two left, kind of, but I think it could be either one of these guys. I'm going to have them take JSN. I think he's the most solid receiver in this class all around. He's not fast. He's actually kind of, I don't want to say slow. He's a bit slower than most of the guys here, though. And, yeah, I'm just going to bank on Lamar staying. If he doesn't, obviously they're going to tag and trade him, and they could be They could be up here. I mean, they could be within this range. It could be Carolina. It could be New York. A lot of things. At 23, we have the regular season Warriors, the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings are a team that doesn't have a lot of huge needs. But, so they're kind of in a good spot here. And what I like about the Vikings is they can kind of take a number of things here and it'll probably work out for them. They got great coaches. They recently brought in Brian Flores, obviously, which is a huge upgrade from Donatel, who kind of, I don't want to say screwed them in the playoff game, but he really, he kind of screwed them. He did not call a great game. He hasn't been great all year. Obviously, there's a lot of games this year we can point out that the defense kind of choked, even though they won a lot of games. But like, take the Cowboys game, for example, the Eagles game, and they got blown out. And that was the defense's fault, obviously. I mean, the offense didn't do them any favors, but yeah, I think the defense is at fault here for this team. So to stop that from happening, I'm going to go ahead and take Nolan Smith here. Nolan Smith could literally go anywhere in this draft, and I would not be surprised. He could go at 10, and I wouldn't be surprised, around that range. And I think it's really interesting that a player that hasn't had a lot of playing time is that highly thought of. I mean, he was a 5-star recruit coming out. I think he was number 1. I'm not sure, but when he's on the field, he plays well enough to warrant this first-round pick selection, kind of like Lucas Van Ness, but he has a lot more injury concerns, obviously, than Van Ness does. At 24, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and obviously they made a great run at it, even won a playoff game against the Chargers, who are known to choke and probably will never stop choking for the history of their franchise. And what the Jaguars really need is, they need a little bit of O-line, but they need defensive backs in general. Corners, I mean, they have Tyson Campbell, who played well in I think this was his rookie season, well enough to warrant that second-round pick, but I think they need some more help. Now, there are some interesting guys here. Actually, Anton Harrison might be the pick. I could see Antonio Johnson being the selection here, but I think they would rather have tackle here. I mean, Jawan Taylor's becoming solid, but to have that other side secured for the next 4 years is big, and potentially 5 because of the 5th-year option. And I think Anton Harrison shows enough to go here, and I think that is the pick. All right, so we have the Giants here, and this is an easy pick. I'm going to take Zay Flowers right now. They need receiver so badly, it's not even funny. And Zay Flowers is a speedy guy who can get open on almost anything, and he can be what Kadarius Toney probably should have been for them. Next up at 26, we have the Cowboys, and I am so tempted to give them Bijan Robinson, but I know that's not super realistic because they're probably going to tag Pollard anyways. But, I'm so tempted. And I don't want to give them tight end because I think they do like Ferguson and Hendershot. So what I'm going to do is, Andre Carter's interesting. I think they're fine with their guys at edge. I know DeMarcus Lawrence is getting older, and he was kind of less effective down the stretch. But I think that they're going to bet on Dorrance Armstrong, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, kind of pushing that edge group forward a little bit and making that next leap and hopefully getting someone later. So I'm going to go ahead and bet on Bijan Robinson. I know it's kind of a luxury pick, but this is something Jerry would totally do if he had a chance. And I think Bijan Robinson is one of those players that I mentioned earlier could go anywhere in this draft. I could see him going as high as, I don't want to say 10, that's a little bit crazy, but he could. He's a blue chip prospect. He's the best running back we've seen in the draft since Saquon Barkley, and I can say that clearly because he's so good. Now, there are teams that could get him, that could trade up ahead of Dallas because they know that Dallas likes taking their first-round running backs. I think the Chargers could take him. I think the Ravens could be interested in that. I think the Bills right here are a big team that could do it because they kind of need that one piece that could get them over the hump. And I think Bijan Robinson could do that, limit Josh Allen's turnovers. But in this situation, the Cowboys took him. So we're going to go ahead and take Next best guy for Buffalo, and I really think that could be a number of players here, but I don't know if BJ Ojulari sneaks into the first round or not. I think it could be. Josh Downs is interesting. I think they could take a receiver. I really think they could. I don't know if they love how Gabriel Davis played for them, and Stephon Diggs is kind of angry, with the lack of winning, obviously, in targets. But, they wouldn't take a tight end. I think they're fine with Rousseau, so they wouldn't take Andre Carter. So I think it's down to Antonio Johnson and maybe Josh Downs. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take Antonio Johnson because you have one great safety, and obviously you don't know if DeMar Hamlin's going to play that soon. So you want to kind of be secured on the other side with Antonio Johnson. I think that's a great safety do it right there, and that improves your defense so much. And I know Bills fans are kind of mad at the defense in general and their defensive coordinator, but I really think he's a solid defensive mind there, and I think he can really turn this defense around next year. He's going to watch the tape. He will focus on the mistakes, and I think that Frazier will end up turning this team around on the defensive side of the ball. Not that they were bad, it's just in the playoffs, they have a short history of kind of failures. Obviously, the Chiefs game with 13 seconds, and this year they kind of choked big time against the Bengals. So, yeah. Speaking of the Bengals, at 28, we have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting right here, and I think the Bengals are a team that could, that could really make a splash here and try to improve right away. They're not going to take the high upside guy, I don't think, and I think they're going to take the most solid player available. Obviously, they have Hayden Hurst. I don't think they would take tight end. Quarterback's completely out of the question. Edge is something I would be interested in. I think Will McDonald or Andre Carter could be interesting options here. Even BJ Ojulari could be something they could be interested in. And I think I'm going to have them doing that. I'm going to take Will McDonald right here with this pick. Now, I know he's not the most highly thought of guy, but I really think he's a solid player and could make a splash right away, just like they want to. And he could come around the clutch and hopefully be a rotational piece that they could come in completely fresh on these the essential downs, like third downs, third and longs, third and shorts, and play up to his potential. 29, New Orleans. They traded for this pick with San Francisco. And they are a team that needs a lot of stuff. I mean, they're in cap hell, so they kind of need everything. And you're really going to need to look ahead at the next 5 years and see, all right, well, who's leaving? Who can we actually retain? And go from there. I don't think they would take quarterback here. Tanner McKee's tempting, but I think that's out of the question. Now I'm just going to have them go. They could go tight end. I just don't know if they would replace Troutman right away. Osiris Torrance is here, and that is tempting. I mean, if they're going best player available, Torrance is the clear option, and I think I'm going to have them go best player available and select Torrance. I don't know if he would make it to 29, but I think that if teams don't like him enough, and I know he's kind of high upside, low floor kind of guy, he could make it to 29, and a team could get lucky around this area. I think the Cowboys could be a team that takes him. I think the Bengals for sure, depending on what Zach Taylor wants. He's an offensive mind, so he could just end up taking the offensive lineman available, but it could go either way. Next year, Philadelphia, who lost the Super Bowl, and they don't have a lot of needs. I know they have guys leaving, like corners, but we kind of covered that up here with Witherspoon, and I don't think they have a lot of big needs after that besides the obvious pick him because you can never have too many offensive linemen or whatever it is, D linemen. And obviously, I know the thing here says they need receiver, guard, and center. They do not need receiver. I do not know what this mock draft is talking about. They're okay there. They have 2 elite receivers at 1 and 2. Now, what they could do is they could take an offensive lineman. Now, we don't have a lot available here, but if there's one that could go, I think Steve Avila could go. He's a good player who could kind of be a plug and play on that Philly offense. You don't know if Jason Kelsey's going to stay around, which is why they have center marked here. And I think he could be one of those guys. But I'm actually going to go ahead and select DeJuan Jones. DeJuan Jones, I think he goes around this area, the late first. And I know he can't. I mean, they don't really have a need for tackle right now, but you never know how long Lane Johnson's going to stay around. And if they believe in DeJuan enough, maybe he could play center or guard if they really needed him to. I think this is just the best player available, one of the best for Philly. The Chiefs are kind of in the same situation. They kind of need a receiver bad. I mean, they got Juju and Marcus Valdes-Scantling on short deals. They definitely don't need tight ends. And they could kind of go from here and select the best guy available. And I think that best guy is Josh Downs. He's a borderline first-round guy for me. I don't love him, but I don't hate him. And I think this is a great spot for him, and I think he can really ball out in the Andy Reid system. And that is the last pick of the first round. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week.